Okay, NAL Playdate number 1 recap. This is for the 2022 season, stage number 2. The first game of the day was Dark Zero versus Beast Coast. This was the most decisive game of the day, and I mean, it was an okay game to start the stage out on. I think it reaffirmed some suspicions and shut down others, right? So Dark Zero, it was unclear if they would continue to be really, really good after winning the major. And, well, the major, it's different from NAL. They got third place in NAL, which is pretty good. But the major has a lot of best of 3, non-best of 1s, right? So they played a best of 5 grand final. They played 2 other best of 3s in the playoffs, but they also played some best of 1s in groups, and they were quite good in groups, and a lot of that came down to maybe experience. The 2 really experienced teams, or well, the 2 more experienced teams, I guess, in terms of having experienced players in their group, got out, and so that was Dark Zero and G2, knocking out W7M and Heroic, and those were sort of the 2 favorites, I guess, to make it out of the groups, at least based on their regional performances. And Beast Coast, I do think, was probably one of the weakest looking teams coming into the stage. Definitely better looking than Mirage. I think pretty much everybody had Mirage at the bottom, but 8th or 9th place is probably where you'd have Beast Coast, and Dark Zero definitely top 3, if not, just 1st or 2nd place. So they play on Theme Park. I don't think this is an especially crazy pick for either team. They both did fairly standard bans. Dark Zero banning up Bank is a little bit weird. They're quite good on it, but maybe they've been seen playing on it enough, and also Beast Coast is quite comfortable on it, so we opt for a Theme Park in the end. Works out quite well for Dark Zero. It's a 7-2 victory, just like pretty much everybody thought. And then looking at the stats, you'll notice Anthony had a dreadful game, 0-8, and he's not one of their premier fraggers or anything. Usually you'd expect Surf and Sweater to be getting a lot of the kills, but 0-8 is obviously just awful by all accounts. Sweater, really, really bad game too. 3 kills on the board, but he went 0-5 on entry, 11% cost, really terrible. And then, so 11% cost, I guess he got all 3 of his kills in 1 round and never did anything else the whole game. If, because there's 9 rounds, 11%, that's 1 out of 9. Okay, and then Slash did okay, Drip did okay, and then Surf did fine, I guess. But, with nobody at even a 1.0 rating, everyone except for one player 1.0 and above on the other team, you can clearly see what happened here. Pambazoo, the major MVP, really popping off in this match, and then Hyper, their other frag-oriented player, and I guess maybe these days everybody sort of is a little bit more frag-oriented than in the past, but these are, I guess, their 2 main fraggers, you'd say. But NJR Eclipse, a Canadian, they can all put up the numbers, and Canadian did do quite well, and a nice start to the stage for him. Usually he ends up a little bit negative as he is playing on just a bunch of different positions. Maybe his role per se stays similar in that he's playing flex, but he does a bunch of different things, and he is the IGL, but good for him here. And then Eclipse, 3-5, but he actually goes 1.0 on rating. He has this 2-0 on entry to make up for it. He has a plant. He has a good cost. I almost wonder if CGG revamped their formula a little bit, because maybe I'm just seeing something that's not actually here, but I swear in a lot of the games it seems like it used to be more focused on kills. Maybe they tweaked it a little bit, or maybe just the circumstances of things that have happened have caused things like this to happen. Maybe I'll point them out in the other matches as we see them. And then like NJR going 6-5 but having a negative rating. He didn't have any entry engagements. He had a not so good cost, and his survivor rate was good. Yeah, it just, I don't know. It just seems like a little bit different than it was. But again, if you think I'm crazy, maybe I am just crazy. All right, that's that match. Let's move on to the next one. Second game of the day was Astralis versus Sonics, and this looked like it would be one of the better games of the day coming into the day, and it did turn out to be. Astralis had to play with their coach here, so DP Fire out, call out in, call out a former pro player, not even terribly long ago. He played in I guess CL for quite a while, and so maybe not a pro at that time, but however you want to call it. He played on E United back in the day with Forest and also against Grixer and Yeti, with Grixer and Yeti, and now he is against them here. So Forest and call out versus Grixer and Yeti. It is Forest and Callout that come out on top, and Sonics were one of the worst teams last stage. Astralis was the best team last stage, and so I guess this result kind of makes sense, but I would have liked to have seen Sonics get the win with Astralis having to play with their coach, given that Sonics were really good last stage, or last year, I suppose, not last stage, and a lot of people were expecting and or hoping for their comeback, and this doesn't mean they're not going to make a comeback, but it makes things a little bit more tenuous. If they had got a solid win against Astralis in this case, it would be a very good sign. fine, but so obviously it could be better, but it could be worse. So they play on Bank, quite solid map, I think, for both teams, and well, turns out to be a little bit better for Astralis. It's a weirdly defender-sided Bank, so if we look at this here, Sonics take the first 4 rounds. It looked like they're, I don't know, just going to smoke Astralis, but then they get their stuff together, and then they get 2 rounds here to close out the half at 2-4, so that's not very good. I mean, Bank generally a pretty attacker-sided map, and just a pretty attacker-sided meta regardless. But yeah, Bank, one of the more attacker-sided maps, and so you definitely want to get at least 3 attacks, if not 4 or 5. Only getting 2 seems like you're not going to be able to win out, but this turned out to be a very defender-sided Bank. I don't know if that has to do a lot with the zombie, a lot with how these teams match up, if it was just a fluke, whatever it was. In regards to a zombie, she did seem to make a lot of impactful plays, but nothing like insurmountable. So I'd say maybe she influenced it, but I just think this is the way that things went for this match. And so we switch sides. Sonics got to go up 5-2, and then Astralis has to kind of claw things back, and they do. They bring it 5-5. They get another round. They're on match point first. Sonics gets a round, go to overtime. They go back and forth, each a defender round, and then Astralis takes the last round. So that makes it 11 out of 15 rounds going to the defenders. So really, really weird. A lot of people did think Astralis was going to take this one. I don't know what amount of that was before and after they found out about the coach subbing in. I did predict Sonics, and, well, I was 1 round away from being right, I guess, but here we are. Yeah, Forrest really popping off, continues to look like an incredible pickup, just has done wonders for this team, along with Callout, and Callout is down here, but, he was playing Castle and Habana, so I think pretty good, all things considered. Shuttle, whatever, Iconic, and J9O kind of here in the middle. J9O, I think, was my player to watch for this team for this stage, and he gets off to a pretty good start here. A big reason why the team is managed to take it in the end, along with Forrest. And then on the other hand, Sonics, Kansan went crazy. He had I think he had 2 really big clutches, and then maybe like 1 or 2 multi-kill rounds as well. They were both like 1v3. One round it kind of was like a 1v4 sort of, but I think on paper they're both 1v3s if I remember right. I guess I could go back and look, but whatever. 1v3s or 4s or however you want to call it. Yeah, Kansan, I guess, is just the clutch king of Bank. Nobody doing especially well on Sonics other than Kansan, but these 3 players doing just kind of whatever. And then Super, I mean, just doing normal Super things. It is what it is. And yeah, it just seems a little bit concerning, the fact that one player had to really pop off multiple times, clutched out multiple rounds that they shouldn't have won, and then they still lost against the coach. But again, Astralis was by far the best team in the league last stage, so we'll have to see how Sonics does going forward. This isn't it's not enough to paint a full picture just yet. So let's go on to the next match. Game number 3, Oxygen versus Parabellum. So it went all 15 rounds, meaning that we had back-to-back round 15 games. Very exciting stuff, and it's nice to see really close games at the beginning of the stage. Hopefully they continue through, the rest of the stage, or at least a decent amount of the stage. Yeah, this is similar to what happened last stage between these 2 teams. So they played on Cafe last time. Here they are on Theme Park, and a little bit bold of Parabellum to go to Theme Park. That is Oxygen's perhaps their best map, if not just one of their best maps. But Parabellum not afraid to take many teams to their supposed favorite map. Cafe was also a pretty good map for Oxygen, and that's where Parabellum went last time. And last time they were up 6-3, Parabellum was, and then Oxygen won 5 in a row to win 8-6. In this one, Parabellum, they were down 1-4, and then they brought it back to 6-5, and then Oxygen pushes overtime, and then I think they go back and forth, and Oxygen finally wins it in the very final round. So another very close affair between these teams. This could be maybe it's signaling something for Oxygen. Maybe they'll have a little bit of struggles. Maybe Parabellum is quite good, or maybe it is just maybe it just comes down to a matchup thing between these 2 teams. And so yeah, a ton of people thought Oxygen was going to take it, but I think that's underestimating Parabellum a little bit. Oxygen was extremely good last stage, and they were also quite good at the major up until their the final game when they weren't. But in the group stage, and then even in their quarterfinal match, they were quite good. So I think they do deserve a lot of credit, but maybe Parabellum deserves a little bit more credit because their roster looks pretty good. I mean, after this game, obviously, but even before it, I think on paper it still looked good. Gunner going crazy with 19 kills. Also good to see Penguin get a lot of kills on the board, playing some Ying, playing some Smoke. Kool-Aid and Eska, dreadful score lines. You have to imagine if one of them did a little bit better, they might have won this game, and then Blaz kind of middling here. And then it was Newers and Foxay on Oxygen. pushing them over the line, I suppose. And then Dream and Laxing, both right around that 1.0, doing fine in their support-oriented kind of roles. We see a bunch of Azami here, and then, Vertical not doing too well, so he had an immaculate stage last stage. Big reason why Auction placed where they did in second place within the league, but getting off to a terrible start here. So if he wants to keep up his streak of doing incredibly in NAL. He did fantastically stage 3 of last year. He did really well in this most previous stage, stage 1 of this year, and now not off to a good start, but yeah, it's just one game. You can bring it back for sure. Okay, so 2 points on the board for Auction. Would have liked to have 3, and Parabellum maybe is happy with that 1 point early on in the stage. We'll see how these two teams progress, and we'll go on to the 4th game of the day. TSM versus Mirage, a rematch from last stage, obviously, but maybe one of the more interesting ones. Mirage beat TSM last stage, which was one of the bigger shockers, I think, of last stage. Maybe if it happened later in the stage, it wouldn't have been as surprising, because at the time, when the match happened, it was unclear that TSM would be as bad as they were, and I think Mirage sort of were expected to be not so good. In the end, they ended up being quite close, TSM above Mirage in terms of points, and it would have been much more skewed in TSM's favor had they won the matchup, but no, it was Mirage. So in the rematch here, it is TSM that takes it. They seem to be starting a little bit of a bounce back, and this is probably the easiest team to start your bounce back against. We're going to have to see them beat definitely better teams than this to officially say that they're back, but they look pretty solid, all things considered. Mirage didn't look terrible. I think okay for their first showing as this team. TSM, no slouches, even if technically you'd call them slouches at the moment, just based on their last stage performance, but they are known to be quite a good team. Obviously, I don't have to tell you guys that. Played on Oregon, and it just seems like an okay choice. TSM, I think, quite like Oregon, but maybe not so good on it recently, and I mean just not so good on any map recently other than like Chalet. That was the only map that they won on last stage. And then looking at how things went down here, yeah, 87%, so super in TSM's favor, and I don't even think that's terribly unrealistic. I think maybe give Mirage a little bit more credit because TSM was quite bad last stage, but TSM being a big org and playing against Mirage, yeah, I think this is probably warranted. Looking at the stats here, Marmalade on top, and then Benji doing pretty well as well. So this is another instance of that thing I was talking about with the rating formula maybe changing. Marmalade only went 8-8, no entry engagements, and a 1.35 rating. Like, that just seems much higher than it would have been before, but again, maybe I'm just totally imagining this. She had quite a good cost, 82%, KPR solid. Survival rate is, I mean, not so good, but the best on the team. 2 plants and the 1vx definitely are a big factor. So again, I mean, have you guys noticed this sort of thing? Maybe you guys don't actually look at the stats nearly as much as I do, but it just seems like skewed a little bit in that it used to be much more skewed towards just kills and whatnot, counting towards the rating, and now maybe a little bit less so. And so Benji showing up pretty well. This game was online, and the next game will also be played online. Some of the players having COVID, that's the same reason why Call Out had to sub in for DP Fire. And Benji Mula, I guess, enjoying his time online. Nyx Kento, Melted, not doing very well. Melted, I think, had it the worst in terms of COVID, the worst symptoms and whatnot. So a pretty bad game from him, but I think he has a pretty solid excuse there. And then over on TSM, Merc and Bolo popping off. Merc had like a pretty lukewarm stage last stage, and I guess he did like relatively well considering how bad the team did. He was right around a 1.0 rating. Bolo, awful, one of the worst players in the league last stage, and maybe this signals a bounce back for him. And then Geo, good numbers as well, especially considering that he is the support guy on the team, one of them. And then Achieved and Chala doing fine. Yeah, just looking good for TSM, a good start, but they are definitely going to have to build upon this. They're not there just yet. They're going to have to do more things to actually look impressive. And so I guess that does it for this. We have one more game to take a look at. Final game of the day, XSET versus Space Station. This game was also played online just like the previous one, and XSET managed to take it down 7-4. These two teams played each other on the very first day of last stage, and Space Station took that one 7-3, so look how far we've come. XSET was quite good after that very first week, really turning things around. There were a lot of questions of if TSM and Space Station would have beat XSET if they played them in any other week other than the first week. And well, if you count this as bonus to week or to stage number 1, then I guess we have our answer here. Yeah, playing online, it's unclear who that really favors, but Space Station having one or more of their members being sick, it's obviously a detriment. Lycan, their coach, was sick, and then either Fultz or Bosco was sick. I don't know which one. not for sure. Maybe both of them. I think just one of them. Anyways, we play on Oregon. I think a little bit curious. Space Station have liked this map for quite a while. They've been pretty good on it overall. Most recently, though, this is the map that they failed to qualify for Charlotte on. They lost to Dark Zero here, and maybe they played it other times besides this as well, but the only other one that I can think of off the top of my head is against TSM, and they did win that. It was an 8-6, but getting taken to overtime by TSM in a stage when TSM was so bad, that was one of TSM's 7 points. Just a little bit concerning. And XSET, they seem to really, really want to play the map, even if they don't get to play it a lot. And the reason they don't get to play it a lot is because people always ban them on it. They 7-0'd Sonics on it, so I guess last stage they played it and they were flawless on it. That's a very rare instance of that ever happening on any map. So yeah, Oregon, I mean, I guess SSG really didn't want to play XSET on these other maps, but I just feel like Oregon was maybe a little bit weird. But again, if we were playing on LAN with everybody healthy, maybe this would have gone differently. Who's to really say? Okay, so 75% of voters nearly went for Space Station, and that might just be a popularity thing. And maybe that was also before the playing online and COVID things were known, but okay, I think this is a little bit skewed. XSET obviously did better than Space Station last stage. XSET in 4th, Space Station in 5th. XSET went to the major, Space Station didn't, so on and so forth. And then looking at the stats, I think it is kind of concerning what happened here. Hot and Cold, 3 1vXs, well over double the next highest rated player's rating on his team, that being Fultz. Yeah, everybody doing from like pretty mediocre, Fultz, to all the way down to really, really bad with Bosco and Skies. So everyone on Space Station except for Houghton. And so just losing the game, and three of your round wins come from Hot and Cold getting 1vXs, and probably the other round win he had several kills in. It just is really concerning. But again, it is an asterisk game with the whole playing online thing. On the other hand, maybe it would have been closer if Spirits didn't absolutely pop off. This was by far the best rating of the day, and I think Hot and Cold and Spirits were the top 2 rated players of the day. Interesting that they were in the same match. But on XSET, they were seemingly a little bit less reliant on the one player, with Yaga also doing pretty well, Diaz and Kino doing okay, and only Gomez kind of doing bad, where again, Space Station, 4 of their players really didn't do very well. Yeah, Spirit's just lethal on entry, almost pretty close to 100% cost. Incredible KPR. Yeah, he went nuts this game. I guess that I heard Bodega say this or tweet this or whatever. He said that Gomez is now the IGL, taking over 4 Spirits, and I guess this really enabled Spirits to get things done. And Gomez, I think, was their worst player last stage, so I guess, I mean, if he puts up similar stats to last stage, but is now the IGL, then he's probably is contributing quite a lot more. Just awful survival rate coming out from him. But it is what it is. They did get the win over Space Station, and fairly convincing fashion, with it being a 7-4. And so that does it for the games for the day. I don't think I'm going to look at the standings. It's sort of cluttered in a way. There's ties at every position except for first and last, with Dark Zero in first, Beast Coast in last, and then there are 2 other teams besides Dark Zero that have 3 points, and that's XSET and TSM, right? And they both won 7-4, and so then there's 2 teams that have 2 points because they won 8-7, and that's Astralis and Oxygen, so on down the line. Then they have the counterparts to those teams tied in 6/7th and 8/9th, and again, Beast Coast in last place for now, but it's there's no real great separation. Even first place to last place is, of course, 1 game, because there's only 1 game that's been played. And then finally, I just wanted to mention about Sens, the newest operator, and just as new as Azami when it comes to pro play, but Sens just came into the game, and the operator quarantine is gone. Yeah, Azami seems really impactful, really good, saw a lot of play. Sens got played 1 round, it was in this game. Space Station played it, didn't really seem to do anything. Operator doesn't seem very good. The kit outside of the primary gadget is awful. The gun's really bad. 50-round clip is nice, but every other stat on the gun is really bad, including recoil. The secondary gadgets, no throwables. It's, hard breach and claymore maybe, so just not very desirable. And then even the primary gadget is sort of situational. You're probably just better off taking an op that has secondary smoke, so Thermite or Twitch or Osa or whoever else, and then you also have a primary gadget to work with. I think maybe as teams figure out the gadget a little bit more, maybe it'll get played for pocket strats, but I do think the operator probably needs a buff to be really viable. And so I guess that does it for the first day. And I suppose, tomorrow or the next day, probably I'll have the recap for the second day. So, all right, with all of that being said, questions, comments, concerns, leave them below. Like and a subscription would be appreciated, and I will catch you guys in the next video.